Hello, welcome back. Alright, so we're going to cover in this video what is kosher, clean versus unclean. Okay? Kosher is a concept that is associated with cleanliness or purity. There's a big difference between biblically clean and biblically kosher. For the purposes of this video, we need to understand that there's a big difference between biblically clean and biblically kosher. For example, in Scripture, it says that you are made unclean by touching the body of a dead corpse, okay? Whether it be an animal or a human being. And that's the most severe form of uncleanliness. However, that has nothing to do with kosher, as kosher is a term that specifically relates to food. The term clean is a really hard term to describe in our Western society because we don't actually have a term that actually relates or associates with that specific term. The Hebrew word is tohar, which is a word for clean, versus the word that they're using for kosher, or is edible, because the word kosher doesn't actually exist in Scripture. When Elohim was talking to Moshe or Moses, he actually used the word, you may eat this and you may not eat that. Kosher is the word that they inserted or that they came up with to describe what can and can't be eaten. It's important to note that when I say clean, I am not necessarily referring to anything that is related to being good or bad, sinful or not. Being clean and unclean was a daily function in Scripture, and so sometimes if they had a dead body, they'd have to wrap that body, and that would make you unclean. Again, it does not relate to what's kosher and not kosher. So it's important that we define that so you understand when I say it's kosher or it's clean to eat, that's not the same thing as saying when you hear in Scripture it says, hey, if you touch a dead body, you're not clean. Not the same thing. Okay, so what makes things unclean? There's several different types or forms of cleanliness. The most severe form of uncleanliness was, as I stated before, touching a dead body, in which case you had to actually go through a cleansing ritual, or a bathing type of ritual, in order to obtain cleanliness again. Another great example was having a baby made a woman unclean, and certainly there was no sin in that. So as far as that's concerned, that had nothing to do with kosher either. That had to do with cleanliness and being purified and ritually clean. Okay, so now that we've defined that, let's talk about what makes clean and unclean animals. This is probably a really good place in the video for you to stop, pause the video, go to the assignments section of the LMS and look up the reading assignment called Leviticus 11, the dietary instructions. So why don't you go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so now that you've read through Leviticus 11, let's take a look at a couple of different things. First, for example, he gives several different explanations of what defines clean on both land animals and both sea animals. And those definitions, I'd like you to go and in the assignment page, during your assignment, I'd like you to make an actual list of what exactly defined clean versus unclean. Because we're going to come back to that in the next video when I talk about the metabolic situation and how what we eat, we become that which we eat, and the metabolics behind that. So we're going to talk about that. So more about clean versus unclean. Basically in Leviticus 11, all carcasses of dead animals made you unclean. However, there were specific animals, like I said, that he said you could eat this and you could not eat that. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about these animals he said you could eat and these animals he said we couldn't eat. And let us look together and see, is there a pattern here that we can actually look at with these animals and figure out why possibly Elohim in this text might have said you can eat this and don't eat this, and may there be some health reasons behind it. Another great example is the idea of boiling a calf in the milk of its mother. Interestingly enough, in the text it doesn't say you can boil a calf in the milk of another cow. It simply says boiling a calf in the milk of its mother. Now, there's a lot of different explanations as to what exactly that text means. When I did my historical research into it, things that I came up with for why you should not do this had more to do with pagan practices as opposed to dietary issues caused by the actual eating of meat and milk together. Okay, so that'll give you a brief overview of clean versus unclean. Okay. Also, I'd like you to please, as soon as this video is over, go to the assignments page and look at the next couple of lessons, which is first, read over again Leviticus 11. Go and start the discussion board. Please download and read The Adverse Influence of Pork Consumption on Health by Dr. Heinrich. Then we will also move on to doing that assignment here in a little bit. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.